be a sponge, and then bring the juice.
By focusing on your improvement, by focusing on your progress, and eliminating any fixed mindset that you may have and acts of perfectionism, then you encourage your own mastery.
On some level, we do what we want to do 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes it may not seem like that, but if I'm choosing to work instead of sleep, what I'm actually saying is keeping my job is more important than sleeping.
I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting beat. What can I do to get over this hump? So mentally, that's when I kind of put that forefront, like, hey, it's either all or nothing.
I like to put failure in quotations because I don't believe that failure is true failure if you're looking at it with the right mindset.
The truth is, the journey to greatness is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus, and every day you have to decide what you value, what you want to pursue, and what you want to achieve. And if you dig deep enough, if you push hard enough, we all have what it takes to be great. Welcome to the Edge of Greatness.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest, Todd Miller. He is currently the assistant baseball coach at Tennessee Tech. He has over 15 years of experience now, including Bluffton, Catawba, Belmont Abbey, and then Tusculum. And so it's a great honor to have you on today. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before this conversation, obviously, I know Corey. So I was asking him to dig in and give me something juicy to ask you to start this conversation off. He thought he failed, but he actually gave me something I think is going to be perfect. So he told me that if you showed up today and asked him to run through a wall, he would do it. How does that make you feel hearing something like that 15 years later, that he's still like, man, that's my guy. If he asked me to do anything, I'm in, let's go.
Man, that is awesome. That fires me up, man. That's why you coach, right? To build those relationships, and Corey's one of the best, and love him to death. And we don't get to see each other often enough, but we definitely, when we do, it's like picking right back up where we left off. So he's a special guy, and that's really cool to hear, man. I want to run through it with him.
Yeah, no. And see, I think that's what's one of the neat things about this is as you get through coaching and you do it for more years, and to think that you made that large of an impact on somebody's life. And like you said, that's why we do it. We want to make an impact, and we want to make some differences and help somebody get through whatever their life's doing and make it better. And I think that you've done that, obviously, for someone like Corey, and I'm assuming for a lot of the kids that you've worked with. So when you hear the word leadership, what does that mean to you?
That's a very broad word. But the word leadership to me is helping others. I mean, putting others first. Oftentimes as people in leadership roles, sometimes we don't do it that way. Oftentimes it's about us individually. And I think that's where leadership is lost. And you don't get the buy-in, you don't get the follow, you don't get the trust. And so for me, leadership is about everybody else in the room, and it's putting others before yourself.
Where do you think you came about that perspective for yourself? Did you have a mentor? Was it something that you picked up over time, or have you always led like that?
I'm fortunate to have just fantastic parents, and, my mom and dad are both mentors, heroes to me. From being a good person to being a good family person, a husband, a father, all those things. And I got to witness it firsthand from my parents. They'll have been married 40 years come August of 22. So they're very special to me. And, longtime teachers and coaches, they've done it that way for a long time. Both of them, my dad being a science teacher at the middle school level, my mom being a health and PE teacher at the middle school level. They were at the same school for 40 years. And so their commitment to putting others first, and all along the way, they were coaches, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, track, soccer, baseball, you name it, they coached it. And so from early on, being kind of engrossed in that environment at home and outside of home, I was very fortunate to get to witness what leadership is firsthand from them, and both of them are still my heroes to this day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you mentioned football, baseball, track, all these different sports, and I know that in college you were a football and a baseball player, correct?
That's correct.
What made you go down the baseball rabbit hole instead of the football one?
I loved football. I loved Friday nights in high school. I loved Saturdays in college. But I always loved baseball, Monday through Sunday. And that was, you get beat up in football. It's a little tougher on the body, where I feel like in baseball you can practice all year long, all day long. And just, I loved growing up. I loved whatever sport was in season, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever was in season, I wanted to play it. And I love the competition. I love the sport of it. But I guess, I felt like baseball has been my love from early on. During high school, like I said, it was whatever was in season. And then once I got to college, I kind of grew towards baseball because of those things, because of the relationships, having good mentors up to that point, and I wanted to have that same impact on others.
Do you feel like that the team dynamic from a baseball standpoint, because of the ability to practice more and do things like that, gives you a chance to make a bigger imprint?
Yeah, I would. Football is very structured. You know what you're doing on Mondays, on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, on Thursdays, on Fridays, and prepare for game day on Saturday. And so you kind of go through that routine, and typically it's 10 weeks. So it's a drawn out season with a few amount of games. And with baseball, it's a drawn out season, but it's condensed in a whole bunch of games, whether it's 40, 50, 60. So you get to have those ups and downs of successes and many failures, and successes and many failures. And, getting the opportunity to compete that many times over the course of a year, you learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about your teammates. You learn a lot about your staff, your team. And so, I do think those bonds get to grow tighter, closer because of all those ups and downs, all those moments of competition, more so than at the I guess in football.
Yeah, I think there's something about when you're competing every single day and you're dealing with failure and difficult moments and tough, just environmental changes on a daily basis, that you tend to lean into each other more because of the challenges. Where in football you're playing once a week, because if you played more than that, you'd probably be a vegetable by the time you were done. But when you think about that, the adversity and the challenges of a baseball season, because for those of you who haven't played, it's literally a marathon in a sprint format, because it's 50 games in 50 days practically. I mean, you get 65 days, let's say. You get 4 days off. When you look at that challenge, what is the hardest thing for you when it comes to leading these men through the daily unexpected grind that they're not ready for? Because college is a different animal for a lot of these kids when they come in.
I think with college, a lot of us athletes think we work hard, think we know what hard work is and what it looks like on a day-to-day level. And when you come into, a college environment, you're 17, 18 years old, and now you're competing with 18 to 23-year-olds. So you really get a chance to see what hard work is. Your version might be here, somebody else's version might be here. And so you really get a chance to see what that looks like on a bigger scale. And if you want to compete at that level, you better hop in and figure out how to swim. But with baseball, I think with the failures, with the successes, all those things, it really mimics life, I think, more so than any other sport. And so understanding, one, how to work, understanding how to fail, how to succeed, how to do it with class, how to do it with dignity, and how to continue to be a better teammate and pick up the guy next to you who maybe he's having a bad day, maybe he's having a great day, but understanding, look, man, this is the greatest game in the world, and it probably mimics life more so than any other sport out there.
I would agree with that. I think that you learn more about what's next in your journey from playing a game like baseball more than any other game, because of the challenges, because of the difficulties, because of the way it tests the brain and how you have to think. It's not just a physical activity. It's a thinking man's game with a physical component, which is very difficult.
And how to prepare and how to get your body, your mind ready to compete, not just one time a week like in football, but maybe it's 4 times a week, maybe it's 5 times a week, and how to understand, look, I wasn't very good yesterday, but I need to be better today, and how to physically and mentally handle that, the successes and failures, but also the preparation to be able to go out and compete, just like life, right? We have good days at work, we have bad days at work, but the one thing that happens is you continue to move forward. Life doesn't care if it was a good day or bad day yesterday. It's going to come back to you tomorrow. So yeah, the preparation is something that you might be the most prepared guy in the room and still lose or still have a tough day, and that's life. That's baseball.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with the life's going to keep rolling, whether you're ready for it or not. And so I want to kind of go a little deeper with that one, because I like that idea that doesn't matter if you had a good day or a bad day. Can you think of a time where you had a bad day or a player that you coached had a bad day, and the teachings of baseball helped them succeed the next day and not carry it into what they were doing next? Because I think hearing something like that would be so valuable for some of my younger athletes that are listening, and some of the coaches, because I see kids all the time who, how you doing today? I had a tough day yesterday. I asked how you were doing today. Well, I don't understand. Like, why are you holding on to that? What's that all about? And so can you think of a time where you just had a really crappy day? It was bad. Things didn't go well. And how did you flush it? How did you do better and move through it?
And we talked, I guess it was last week, a little bit at the conference. And the biggest thing probably to me in my career was my first year of coaching. We had some serious adversity. And I was a 22-year-old first year college coach, and we're preparing our 35 young men to get ready to go down to South Florida and compete, to kick off their season. And we hop on a charter bus, we drive the 18-hour trip, or we embark on our 18-hour trip. Halfway, we pick up a new bus driver, his wife, and we're just north of Atlanta. It's 4:30 in the morning. We're headed south, down to Florida, and we hop back on the bus and we embark down to Florida. Well, unknowingly, the bus driver, we're on the HOV lane, the high occupancy vehicle lane, and that turns into an exit ramp. And we're cruising 70 miles an hour up this exit ramp that tees with the overpass above. And long story short, we don't have time to stop. Bus driver, he understands it's not going to be a good situation. I'm sitting, there's an empty seat behind him, and I'm sitting in the second row. And I remember I was just sitting there, my feet in the aisle, my back on the 2 seats. And I remember him saying, "Oh shit." And I sit up and I look out the front windshield, and I see the retention fence, and boom, we hit the fence. Next thing you know, I wake up in the ICU room in Atlanta Medical Center, and I didn't know what happened. I was in and out of kind of being awake, not being awake. I remember when I woke up, I had a big neck brace on. My left arm was swollen about the size of my leg, and I had skull fracture, broken jaw, 4 broken bones in my back. And I didn't know what had happened. I just knew we were headed to Florida. We were supposed to be practicing later that day. And I thought, shoot, I don't know what I did to screw up our trip. You know, we're supposed to be in Sarasota to practice today. And I didn't know what had happened. I fall asleep, I wake back up, and I see, you know, the TV monitor in the ICU room, and, you know, it's on CNN. And that's when I first found out what had happened. Well, our bus had gone over the overpass, and 4 players, the bus driver, his wife, at that initial moment. And they didn't tell us, you know, I'm seeing this on CNN. I didn't know what had happened, how it happened. And I was completely floored. And, you know, as one of the coaches of our team, all we knew, there were 4 players at that time. A 5th later passed later that week, but you didn't know who it was. You didn't know which guys. And so there was a lot of fear, a lot of helplessness, because you couldn't help your guys. And you're just sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, you know, this was a big event, and this is a horrific tragedy, and you just want to go out and help. And for me, I was stuck there in the ICU room, and for a couple more days until I was released. And I guess to answer your question, that was a huge moment in my first year of coaching that it's stuck with me. It'll stick with me for the rest of my life. It's stuck with me for my, 16. I've been fortunate enough to be in the college game for 16 years now. And it's definitely made a huge impact on me as a person, as a man, as a coach. Kind of fast forward through that, so we get back from Atlanta, we're dealing with 5 of our teammates, our players, their best friends, roommates that had passed away, the bus driver, his wife. And, we come back to Ohio, and Coach Grandy, our head coach, he was more severely wounded. He was down in ICU at Grady Memorial Hospital for, I think, a few more weeks. He had, broken jaw. He had pins and things through his foot. His mouth was wired shut. And so he was down there getting the care that he needed for, I want to say, about another month to 3 weeks before he was able to come back to Bluffton. And kind of in that time, I felt called to help lead the team, and had to stand in, take over as the head coach there for the time being. And I remember talking to our guys. We get back, and we go to the guys' funerals, and I remember speaking at David Betts's funeral, and one of my favorite guys that I've coached. His dad had given me his son's bat. David and I we'd hit a lot. He's a great kid. He's sophomore second baseman. He's probably going to be our starting second baseman that year. 3.9 GPA, biology major. Just a great kid, great family, great work ethic. And he wanted to be a doctor, and baseball was kind of his path to figure out some of these life skills and understand how he was going to be with life after baseball. And so, I spoke at David's funeral, and his dad had given me his bat. It means a lot to me. It's still with me. It's one of my treasures that I'll hold on to for the rest of my life. And, I shared this with you, I guess last week, but, one of the things that David had written in the brim of his hat was, play like there's no tomorrow. And how fitting is that? Prior to leaving for that bus trip, nobody would have imagined that happening. And, that was David. He was going to play hard, and he was going to do everything it took, and leave no stone unturned, and do that. But getting a little bit off track here, but
no, you're all right.
That's kind of, we did the funerals, and gosh, it was hard. It's still hard to think about now. And I remember we had a team meeting with the guys and everybody in the room, and just asking them, what do you guys want to do? We can cancel the season. We can play the season. There's no script for this. There's no right or wrong. Hopefully this never happens again, but we're in it right now. And, if we're going to play, we can play. If we're not, that's fine as well. It's only up to the guys in this room, and anybody outside of this room, it doesn't matter. And I remember them saying, look, coach, we want to play, and that's what we want to do. And I said, I think that's a great decision. Let's do it. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it to the best of our abilities. And we're not going to go out to practice or go to the games and sit around and feel sorry for ourselves and, look at the hand that was dealt to us. And, we're going to go out and play as hard as we can. And that's going to help in the physical and mental healing process. And we can play for the guys that aren't with us anymore. And, it was such a unique moment in my life and my career. And I didn't know the weight of year one for me as a coach going through it at the time. And now having some, I guess, more perspective, now I'm an old guy with a wife and 3 kids. And at the time I was 22 and trying to help guys along through that, help myself along through that process as well. And now getting a chance to kind of look back down the road and coach with perspective, coach with the people in mind first. It's not the wins and the losses. It's the people first, and the people make the place. And, a horrible thing to go through, but there's always a silver lining to it. And there's always something that we can take away from it. I wish like heck those guys were still with us. And I would do anything I could to bring them back, but I can't. So for me, I was fortunate enough to meet my wife through this experience. She was a senior softball player at Tiffin University, about 45 minutes down the road. And she was thinking, all of us athletes have ridden on buses many a time, and this could have been us. It could have been anybody. And she put together a huge event, called it Purple Day, and sold t-shirts. And long story short, they raised about $15,000 in a weekend. And it was about a month after the accident, they bring over the check. She brings over the check with the people that had helped her. And that was the first time her and I met. And, had this tragedy not happened, I wouldn't have met her. And fast forward a year from there, we start talking. She had reached out. We had reached out to each other on Facebook. Hey, just thinking of you. We talk. And a few weeks later, it's a year and a few months after the accident, we decide, hey, let's go get something to eat. It's not like I'm going to marry her. I'll go on a date with her. Why not? And so, like I said, 10 years later, now being married and 3 happy, healthy kids, that opportunity, I would never have met my wife had this event not happened. So trying to find some silver lining find the good in a difficult situation. And I say all of that just to say that has helped give me perspective as a husband, as a father, as a coach. And so a long answer to your short question is that was 16 years ago, but that was something that has stuck with me every day since then. And, I hope that I lead in such a way to honor those guys daily.
Yeah, no, when I hear that story and I hear about tragedies like that, where things are out of our control, it's so easy to get sucked into the moment of why me, why us, why now. And I love the idea of, in that moment, it's hard because you're not going to know why it happened or what you're going to learn or gain from it. But when you talked about it last weekend, you mentioned you heard kids who stepped up as leaders in a tragedy. Mm-hmm. They took ownership of situations that were uncomfortable and not easy to be in. And they just instantly they became men. And obviously it led to you meeting your wife. And I'm sure it has an impact on how you lead today because of that moment. And I'm sure it has an impact on Corey, who we mentioned earlier in the episode and I had on before, but those things shape us, and like I talked about too in my talk is, we don't know when the storms are going to show up, how long they're going to last, how big they're going to be. But if we find a way to paddle through them together, on the other side, we become a lot stronger. So thank you for sharing that. No, I'm glad you did that, because I think there's a lot of value in that story. I think there's a lot of growth opportunities for people, because we all have storms. We all have things that we're going to face that are challenging. Hopefully most people aren't going through tragedies to that extreme, but everybody's personal moments are all going to feel heavy.
Sure.
And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
When you think about that moment and the adversity that your team faced, how do you think that impacted your guys' relationship with adversity going forward?
I think initially we thought, we're never going to go through, hopefully never going to go through anything as hard as this. And it's all about perspective, right? Sometimes we get bogged down in the little things that aren't as big as we make them out to be. And so having some perspective of importance on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it? How meaningful is it? So from that, it was, I think we really stuck together like glue, and we knew we could get through anything as long as it was together. And, you've got guys who are freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And just because of your age doesn't mean you're a leader or not. We've got great leaders who are young guys. We've got great leaders who are older guys. But I think everybody knew it was going to be together. And, that's the power of team. How often do we see teams that are super talented, but they have no direction? They have no togetherness. Extremely talented. You put each guy up against one another, they're going to beat the 10 across from them or the 9 across from them. But then you start to see like what people value. Okay, I value the guy next to me, and I value this guy next to me. And kind of your first question on leadership is, can I put the guy next to me and the guy next to me before myself? And if I can do that, I got a chance to be really successful and have a really meaningful experience. And so I think the biggest thing, at least that I took away, was it's about the people. It's about the brothers and friends and young men next to me. And if I can help my neighbor and put him before myself, all those things that I want to have happen personally probably will happen, but it's going to be a lot more meaningful because my direction and focus is on someone else other than myself.
When you think about, you mentioned a few times, it's about the people. So when you think about your coaching philosophy and how you approach that, how do you help a kid who is struggling to buy into the fact that they're not the guy anymore? Because I know all of our everyone listening to who's coached has that kid who's talented, but he's not quite ready. But because he's not quite ready, he gets a little distracted. He gets a little bit of an attitude, or he starts to, just be like, I don't even know why I'm here. How do we help that kid? Because we've all seen that kid, and he's probably a great kid who's going to contribute at some point. He's just not there yet. How do we get him to stay on the boat?
That's a great question. Sometimes they're not ready to be on the boat until they fail. And we get talented kids, right? We recruit whatever level it's at, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. We get talented kids. We get guys that we feel like can come in and help us and contribute to the success of our team. So, you can take all their high school stats and kind of throw them out the window. Everybody was a good player at some point. So they come in and they were a 450 hitter in high school. Well, I hope you do the same thing in college, but the game is different. So you have to learn to adapt, and there has to be some changes that happen. So oftentimes those we as coaches see, hey, this guy needs to make this adjustment and this adjustment and this adjustment. And we know that. And I think probably one of the most important things is, when do we share that information with them? The timeliness of, hey, I think I have some of the answers to this kid's test, but when do I share it with him? When is he going to be receptive to part of the solution? And oftentimes, at least in my experience, it's not until that kid experiences some failure of some sort. He's not willing to listen or buy in until he starts to have some personal failures. So, and each kid is different. You know, some kid, they walk through the door, they're bought in, they trust you right out the gate. You know, you built that rapport with them in the recruiting process, and other kids are like, you know what, I'm pretty good. I've done it myself. And well, you're here because we think you are good and you're going to help us. But at some point, whatever level you get to, they're going to have some failure. They're going to have some setbacks. And well, I've experienced that oftentimes there are guys out there that they're not receptive to your coaching or to your solution to the problem until they have those failures.
That's an interesting answer. And you said something in there that made me think of parenting, honestly, because I have 2 young kids myself, and the balance between, like, you have answers to the test. Like, we know what's going to come for our young kids. At some point, how do we balance between letting them fall and not, and giving them the answer so they don't mess up? Because I sure as heck know that I want my kids to learn to overcome failure, but I also don't want to see them fall. So
right.
It's an interesting dynamic, because I feel like that's like leadership with coaching and parenting. So do you have a something in mind for your kids when you see them going down a path and you're like, this isn't going to end well? When do you step in?
You know, you bringing up the parenting made me, I've got 3 little ones. All right. Our oldest is 9, and then we've got 2 boys, 6 and 3. And to me, the 3 of them, they come out of the same household, right? But each of them is so different. And so to me, it makes me think back to our team, right? We've got one team. It's our family, but they're from 35 different households. So you got 35 different perspectives all bundled up into one family. And so, like, for our kids, we could tell our oldest, look, the stove is hot, don't touch it. Okay, I'm not going to touch it because I'll burn myself. Great. That's a good kid who's listening. And then we've got our youngest who's, hey, the stove is hot, don't touch it. Oh, okay. And he puts his hand right on it. He had to have that failure, or he had to understand that's what mommy or daddy meant. And so to me, every kid is is different. And, you know, we can tell them the answers, but until they experience themselves or they're ready to listen, that's what I've experienced.
No, I love that. And I think that's a perfect way of summing it up. You know, we want to give people answers, but you can't stop the failure from happening. So you can tell them, hey, you probably don't want to do that, but you shouldn't stop them if they choose to do it anyway. It's what it sounds like you're trying to say, is like, I mean, obviously you don't want them to get like hurt,
Sure.
but like in most cases, I'm thinking more now on the leadership side, like, hey, you don't
Right.
want to do this. That's going to mess up the team dynamic. Oh, shoot, that messed up the team dynamic. Well, that's what I said. That's what I said.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you do on a regular basis to help tie in the culture piece? Because you mentioned family, and I love the idea of teams being family. That's how I always used to break when I was coaching, is, you know, we'd call out family. We wouldn't call the name of the school, because schools change, you go different places, you go become different people, but the family stays in that last. So what are some of the things that you do to keep that culture growing tighter over time?
You know, I think culture is a fragile thing, and it's something that you have to be cognizant of on a daily basis. It takes time to build, and it takes a short amount of time to break it. And so you try to do different things. You try to get to know your guys. You try to get your guys to put them in opportunities to lead. lead by example, to lead verbally, to have moments where it's theirs. You know, we tell our guys, look, this is your team, and we're going to be whatever you guys want it to be. We're here to help facilitate that. But ultimately, the amount of work that you want to put in, you know, we feel like we've got a pretty good plan. You know, it's kind of like thinking right now, we're sending our guys home for break. We can have the best plan in the world over the next 6 weeks for them to do. But ultimately, they can have the plan and they can choose not to do it. And so the best plan in the world is nothing unless there's some implementation. So it's up to our guys to go out and execute it. And, you know, it is their team, it is their career, it is their whatever it may be. So kind of understanding that, and I guess that's the individualistic side of a team sport. It takes all 35 guys to buy into what they need to do to help the team be successful. And so for us, for me, it's very, I would say, a la carte. Like it's our guys building their own plan within the framework of the team. So what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. So understanding, you know, kind of meet our guys where their feet are at, meet our guys where they are. You know, it's not about me, it's about them. And so what I think is best might not be the best for what Johnny or Joey thinks. And, you know, I can help facilitate or push them in a certain direction, but ultimately it's going to be their decision. You know,
It sounds like you give them a lot of freedom to make the team the way they want it to be. And I think that's crucial to making the unit tighter, is they know that they have a say in the direction the boat's going. You know, like we're all trying to get to the championship destination, right? But if you're the only one steering the boat, but everyone else is rowing the other way, that doesn't do you any good. So if you give them some freedom to find their way and their footing, and everyone rows together and does their part and pulls their weight, you're going to get there a lot faster.
Yep. And it's like the boat analogy. If I don't have an oar in the game, then I can't paddle in that direction. So to give them some freedom, some individuality, some whatever you want to call it within the framework of our group, they got to have some skin in the game. And, you know, if we all have a paddle, we're going to be able to paddle at the same speed at the same rate. If some guys have a paddle and some guys have their hands or arms, we're not getting to where we want to get in the right time or in the right direction.
I like that. And you said something there that made me have a thought, having an oar in the water and having some skin in the game. And what it made me think of is when you are coaching and you're leading and you're in the game and you're with them, how often do you let them see you fail?
Yeah, I mean, it happens, right? You know, we make bad decisions at times, and, you know, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have tried to steal that guy, or I wish I would have held that guy at third base there. So I think with leading, we have to have the ability to admit our shortcomings too. Hey, I screwed that up there. I'm sorry. You guys pick me up. You know, it's okay, coach. We got you. But I think being able to admit fault gives the players freedom to be more honest and open with you.
Yeah. I mean, because I think it's one of the big things is these are young men, they're kids, they're learning, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to fail at their game. They're going to make mistakes as far as not doing their homework and getting a bad grade. They're going to, you know, wake up late for practice. There's going to be things that happen along the way that make life challenging. And if they don't think they can mess up, that's when I think you get people who try to skip and cut corners and do things that are more detrimental to the culture, to the team, to the growth and the togetherness.
Yeah, I agree. I think them seeing us, understanding that we're not perfect, we're not robots, we're human, we're just like them. And probably a lot of the things that maybe they have shortcomings on, we do too, right? And we're all working to get better daily, but look, sometimes life's hard, right? Sometimes there's bumps and bumps in the road, and things happen. Just like being a part of a family, it's not always a straight line. Sometimes there's some curves and there's some bumps, but understanding we're all in this thing together. And I think that's admitting when we're wrong, and being honest and open, all those core values as a family that you have, that I have, that we all have, like whatever those things are important to you, they're going to be important to our players as well.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, I could probably talk to you for another 45 minutes to an hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. So what I want to do now is, while we wind down, where is a place that some of the listeners that are following along and paying attention to what we're doing here can see what you're doing next and be a part of your journey and your team's success and those types of places?
Yeah, so currently at Tennessee Tech University, and not everybody can be in person here, but going through our first, or getting ready to start our first spring, we'll have stuff on social media. You'll be able to live stream games and watch that way. But being able to follow, I guess, me on social media would be something as well. I'm always excited and open to meet new people and get a chance to talk. And that's why we do it.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll make sure I put some links to different things as far as the Tennessee Tech website and your Twitter and things like that, so people can get a hold of you if they have any questions and want to reach out. So thank you so much for taking time with me today. I really do appreciate telling the stories and talking about leadership. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face. But remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. If you haven't yet, please take a minute now to subscribe and review our show. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But remember, no matter what happens, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.